We've come to Acts 17 and we've arrived in the sunshine at Athens, which is nice for a day like this as we look across Arnold and Woodthorpe. You can't see Woodthorpe from Arnold at the moment when I woke up this morning, so I hope you're taking your vitamin D. But just look at that. One day there will be sunshine, one day we'll be able to travel again and it will be all over. So let's move into the passage. And what we have here is a great clash of kingdoms. We have the rabbi, the man trained in all the teaching of the Jews and the word of God, meeting the philosophers of the age. We have Athens representing the philosophers of this world versus Jerusalem, the city of the great king. We have reason versus revelation. So this is a great sort of chapter in the book of Acts. And what we'll see then, we'll have a few words around Athens as why Paul is there suddenly. And then we'll look at the philosophers who rock up and try to catch him out. And then we'll have a look at the Areopagus. If you're using an older version of the Bible, that is called Mars Hill. But the Areopagus, and then we'll look at Paul's speech. Oh, that's good. So, you're saved. I've been going 59 seconds. There you go. So let's read. While Paul was waiting for Silas and Timothy in Athens, he was greatly distressed to see that the city was full of idols. So, what did he do? Did he have a day off? No. So, he reasoned in the synagogue with both Jews and God-fearing Greeks, as well as in the marketplace, day by day, with those who happened to be there. So if you remember, Paul's had to flee from Berea, and he's been taken down to the coast, and then he's got a boat along to Piraeus and landed in Athens. And he's waiting for his companions Silas and Timothy, who stayed on in Macedonia. You remember, Paul thought he was called to Macedonia, but he suddenly ended up in Achaia, in Athens. So he goes and has a look round, and he sees this city is full of idols. Contemporary accounts say that if you went to Athens, you're more likely to meet an idol than a human being. So he's in a place full of idolatry. And he starts off by going back to his pattern, first to the Jew, then to the Greek. He goes to the synagogue to preach the gospel, and then he goes and just speaks to whoever's in the marketplace. So he has a combination as an evangelist of intentional speaking about Christ. He goes to the synagogue, he goes to the place where he knows there will be people interested in God, and then he takes his daily walk, like hopefully some of us are doing, and he happens to speak to anybody he meets about Jesus. And that's my prayer that at the moment that our sort of accidental witness will be more powerful than we've ever known in our lives before. So he goes to the marketplace and he speaks just to those who happen to be there. So as far as Paul is concerned, this is unplanned. He didn't intend to go to Athens. He thought he was called to Macedonia. He thought he was going to preach and build churches in Thessalonica and Berea. And he's ended up, accidentally in brackets, in Athens, in the cultural centre of the world of that day. Now, the Golden Age of Athens is 500 years before. You may have heard of Socrates and Plato and Aristotle, but that was like 500 years before this. But nevertheless, Athens has retained its reputation as a centre of learning. And as we'll see in our own passage, people from all over the world have come to Athens to listen to the greatest philosophers of the day as they seek to try and find out the meaning of life. And Paul is waiting, but he's also using his time well. And some of us at the moment are waiting for things to happen, aren't we? But we need to use our time well and believe and trust God's providence, that God is in charge of our times, days and minutes. And Paul is provoked by the fact that these human beings are in thrall and in fear to idols. Wherever he goes, there are idols to the Greek and Roman gods. And he is bothered. We might say, well, I'm not bothered. But he is really, really bothered. The words here indicate he's deeply troubled. He sees his fellow human beings sort of submerged in idolatry and superstition. It's like us might have friends and they're full of fears and they read their horoscopes and they're, every day they're full of fear about what might or might not happen. They're just living on their nerves. And he's provoked. He wants to do something about it. So as I said, intentionally he goes to the synagogue to speak to the Jews and the God-fearers, But then he goes to the marketplace, to the agora, and if you like, if it was for you and me, he goes to work, or he goes to playgroup, or he waits at the school gates, and he speaks about Jesus to whoever he comes across. And then the philosophers hear about this, so a group of Epicurean and Stoic philosophers began to debate with him. Some of them asked, "What is this babbler trying to say?" Others remarked, "He seems to be advocating foreign gods." They said this because Jesus was preaching the good news about Jesus and the resurrection. So two of the main groups of the philosophers are the Epicureans and the Stoics. And they come along, they like debate, that's what they live for actually. And they're not very complimentary. In the NIV, they say, "What is this babbler?" In your version, it might be something else, but it's not a very helpful, it's a derogatory meaning. And so they're sneering at him. Others seem to be kind of listening a bit, but they think he's talking about two gods. They think he's talking about a male god called Jesus, and then this female consort god called Anastasis, resurrection. They think he's talking about another god called Jesus and another god called resurrection. They haven't figured out that he's talking about Jesus being raised from the dead. So here they come. These two, there are more groups of philosophers, but these are the two main groups. And I put it to you that you and I and the people we meet often incline to be an Epicurean or Stoic. But what we have here is human reason. The philosophers rock up and they meet the revelation of God through Paul. Now, Paul might have just said, "Here's a Bible, here's a New Testament, you read this." But the thing is, he would also have to say, I haven't actually written it yet, okay? Paul hasn't written down the teaching yet. If you want to know the New Testament, you've got to talk to Paul. So Paul versus the philosophers. And as I said, some of them are interested, some of them are scathing, some of them are pretty confused. And they say, "You babbler," that's literally you seed picker, this seed picker. And what they mean is a bird that goes around picking up seed. If you think of the marketplace in Nottingham, they're saying he's like a pigeon going around picking up seed. He's like somebody, a bit more derogatory, somebody like going around picking up fag ends and smoking them. They're saying he's like somebody who surfs a few Wikipedia articles and thinks they know exactly what's going on. And then when they're half drunk in the pub at night, they have a philosophical debate about the meaning of life. He's saying, what does this babbler say? So, inasmuch as the New Testament mentions Epicureans and Stoics, I think it's okay for us to have a think about who these people are. So, the Epicureans are like people today who just believe in chance and randomness, that life is just like, it's a lottery. You take what's come to you. Some people are lucky, some people are not. The Stoics actually believe in fate and order. They're the kind of people who say, "Oh, I know everything's meant for a reason." The Epicureans say we need to cope with the difficulties of life by escaping and enjoyment and having a laugh. These are the people who watch Strictly. These are the people who have drinks that look very nice and they've got little hats and little things sticking in them with cherries, okay? These are people who cope with life by just going on holiday or watching sport or just having a laugh with their mates because they don't really want to think about how grim life is. But the Stoics believe that life is pretty grim and we've just got to endure and submit to life. You've heard of people saying that he's very stoic, they have stoic attitude. These are the people who kind of say, like when I had a job lorry driving once, this fellow lorry driver, an old man, said to me, 5 a.m. in the morning, he said, I think he said youth to begin with. He said, "Youth, it's a hard life, but a good one if you don't weaken." So that was his philosophy of life. Let's just get on with it, endure it. These are people who probably don't watch Strictly, they watch Panorama, okay? These are serious people. They read, the really difficult newspapers. The Epicureans believe that matter is eternal. There's no beginning. There's no beginning point. It's always been there. The Stoics believe everything is one. God, spirit, soul, man, the universe, everything is just one. There was no beginning, there's a oneness of all things. The Epicureans believed if there were gods, they're remote and a long, long way away. They're like people who say, well, maybe God made things, but he's not interested in my little life. He's set things in motion like a big clock, and it's ticking away, but he's not actually interested in our daily lives. There's no point in praying because he's not listening. But the Stoics believed in the divinity and unity of all things, that God is not separate from the things that are made, and everything is one. There's no creator as such, no beginning as well. Now, the Epicureans conveniently thought that when we die, our soul and body disappears. There's no such thing as Judgment Day. When you're dead, that's it. It's all over. There's a few years, you've got 60, 70 years of life here. Just enjoy it while you can, because when you die like a dog. And we sort of crept out of the primeval slime. And when we die, we just disappear. There's no Judgment Day, no accounting. The Stoics believe that the soul, some of them believe the soul lives on for a while, but eventually everything is absorbed into one. So the Epicureans and the Stoics live today, in my opinion. I've met many of them, and some of these beliefs before I was a Christian I would identify with. But the thing that the Epicureans and Stoics were definitely agreed about, and the Greeks in general were agreed about, was this: there is no resurrection of the body. There is no resurrection of the body. Paul's preaching the resurrection, so they're saying you're stupid, you're a seed picker, or you're just deluded, and that is definitely not going to happen. So they take him and brought him to a meeting of the Areopagus. Now, the Areopagus is the religious council in Jerusalem, not in Jerusalem, Athens even. Okay, let's go, Athens, not Jerusalem. And the Areopagus, it means the hill of Ares. Pagus is hill, Ares is their god of war and thunder. That's why some of your versions say it's Mars Hill, the Roman god of war. So they take him to this religious council. May we know what this new teaching is that you are presenting? You are bringing some strange ideas to our ears, and we would like to know what they mean. And then we have in brackets, here's Dr. Luke with his scathing comment: all the Athenians and the foreigners who live there spent their time doing nothing but talking about and listening to the latest ideas. Okay, there's another debate. We can spend a few hours of our miserable lives talking about this, that, or the other, but they never really want to close with truth. They just love debate. They love talking about these things, but they don't really want to come to a conclusion. So a Middle Ages artist has helpfully shown us what it was like, okay? And in the corner, there are the two who do listen: Dionysus, who becomes a Christian, and Damaris, a highborn woman who's there. So he's meeting the religious council, the guardians of the faith, the guardians of what people are supposed to believe and what the sort of parameters of belief are in Athens. And they want to know, who are these gods? Who are these foreign deities that you're talking about? Are you talking about one God called Jesus, one called resurrection? What are you talking about? They love this sort of thing. They love talking. They love talking, debating, endless debate. And Paul, therefore, gives them a speech. So Paul then stood up in the meeting of the Areopagus and said, "People of Athens, I see that in every way you are very religious." And he's very clever. He could mean that in a scathing way, or he's sort of trying to get in with them. But we know you can take that either way. I see that in every way you are very religious. For as I walked around and looked carefully at your objects of worship, I even found an altar with this inscription: to an unknown God. So they even had a monument, an idol, an altar to an unknown God. Cover the bases. We might be offending this unknown God, so let's worship to him and let's sacrifice to him in case he's offended and sends a thunderbolt down. We better, cover the ground. So you are ignorant of the very thing you worship, and this is what I am going to proclaim to you. Do you know that story? I love that story of a little girl who's in class and she's drawing a picture, and the teacher comes across and says, "What are you drawing?" And she says, "I'm drawing a picture of God." And the lady teacher says, "Well, dear, nobody really knows what God looks like, do they?" And the little girl then says, "Well, miss, when I've finished, they will." So Paul says, "You're ignorant of who God is. Well, I am going to tell you who this unknown God is." The God who made the world and everything in it is the Lord of heaven and earth and does not live in temples built by human hands. And he is not served by human hands as if he needed anything. Rather, he himself gives everyone life and breath and everything else. From one man he made all the nations that they should inhabit the whole earth. And he marked out their appointed times in history and the boundaries of their lands. Now, if you're listening to what I said about the Epicureans and the Stoics and people of today believe, he's actually confronting those beliefs. He's saying there is a beginning. He's saying there is a God who's created all things. There is a God who doesn't need your sort of food on your altars. He's self-sufficient. And he gives us all life. And you Greeks, in your pride, who think that everybody else who is not a Greek is a barbarian, you need to realize that from one man he has made all the nations, that they should inhabit the whole earth. And it's not fate or chance that is in charge of your little lives, but it's a great and awesome God. You're not the victim of the stars or the horoscopes, and that's a good word for each of us listening today, isn't it? God is in charge of today, the times of the pandemic. You can say like the psalmist, oh God, my times are in your hands. You're not in the hands of fate. You're not in the hands of some impersonal matter. You're in the hands of a Father in heaven. So those of you who are consumed with anxiety at the moment, just believe that. You are in the hands of a God who has appointed the times in history and the boundaries of every nation and the boundaries of every land. And if he can do that for the nations throughout all history, he can do it for you and me. He is Father, and our times are in his hands. And God has done this so that men might seek him and perhaps reach out for him and find him, though he is not far from any one of us. He's not out there like the Epicureans and the Deists said. He sort of set the universe ticking and then he's cleared off somewhere. He is involved in us. And then Paul, to sort of cut to the chase, he quotes their own poets at them. He is in touch with his own culture and their culture. He quotes a poet from his own background area of Tarsus in Cilicia. For in him we live and move and have our being. As some of your own poets have said, we are his offspring. So he finds a way in. He's looking for a point of contact to talk to these people. So he's found a way in. He's looking for a way in. He sees an altar to an unknown God. So he says, right, that's where I'm going in. Get into their minds, get under their skin with this. And then he quotes their own poets to even drive the point further home. And he's telling them, he's sort of confronting their false beliefs. He's saying, look, there is a creator. He is all-sufficient. He is the sustaining life-giver of all things. And from one man, he has made all men. From humus, he's made humans. From one dust, he's made Adam, the man of dust. And he's sovereign over the nations, history and times. And Paul must have thought that, yeah, well, I'm here. I didn't intend to be here in Athens, but while I'm here, I'm going to use my time well. And this God seeks relationship. And I'd like to give you a quick example of this guy, Wendell Berry, a Christian who's a farmer. He writes really nice novels, which I enjoy, and he writes poems. And I think what he does so often, he uses his understanding of modern culture and his understanding of the Bible, and as a Christian, he wants to confront people. And this little writing, these little questions of his, I think are really great. So, some people believe in the Big Bang as the origins of everything, don't they? So, Wendell Berry says, okay, number one, what banged? Number two, before banging, how did it get there? And number three, when it got there, where was it? That's a good way. Think about that. In the past, God has overlooked such ignorance, but now he commands all people everywhere to repent. So this is Advent, isn't it? Advent time. The coming of Christ, he's come once, he's coming back a second time. Advent season traditionally is when we actually focus on the second coming of Christ. He has come once and he will come again, just like the angel said. This Jesus, who you see going up into heaven in the ascension, will come back in the same way that you saw him go. Luke's going to write that in Acts 1. For he has set a day when he will judge the world with justice by the man he has appointed. He has given proof of this to everyone by raising him from the dead. So Epicureans and Stoics and philosophers and people of the 21st century, Paul and the Bible say, look, there is an end to time. It's not cyclical. We're not going round and round. Matter's not eternal. There was a beginning, there is an end, and there is a judgment. And there is a judge, and he's also a man like us, and he's going to judge humanity, and he has been raised from the dead, and God has raised this Son of God now, who was crucified in weakness. He's raised now in power. He has given proof of this to everyone by raising him from the dead. So, what Paul is saying, basically, the times have changed. There is an AD and a BC. The day of salvation has come. The Son of God has come and died and been raised for us, and he is the coming judge. There is an end day. So, what you can do, and you have your own responsibility in the way you react to this, you can sneer and continue to sneer until the day you die, or you can consider these things further, like some of these philosophers did. We want to hear more about this, we want to think about it a bit longer, or you can believe and follow, like Dionysus and Damaris, and it says a few others. So there you go. Sneer, consider, believe. Which will you do?